Welcome to the Daily Vibecasting. Today, tech valuations completely detached from the human workforce. Autonomous AI agents are coding in public, and the American dream of homeownership gets delayed by a full decade.
Yeah, it's a massive day on the wire.
It really is, and I am so glad you are joining us for this deep dive. Our mission today is exactly what you've come to expect, right? We take the day's raw social wire, treat it like a massive high-stakes puzzle.
Right, trying to synthesize that collision of markets, technology, and culture.
Exactly. We want to figure out what is actually driving the machine beneath all the noise.
And as always, I am ready to tear right into the consensus. Because, when you look at the surface narrative today, Wall Street is cheering. The tech sector is like taking these huge victory
I'm
laps.
absolutely throwing a parade.
Right. But if you look at the second order effects, the actual foundation of the economy, it is actively fracturing.
Yeah, and we have to start with the lead story today because this single data point sets the table for literally everything else we're going to talk about.
Let's hear it.
So there's a post from the Kobisi letter, handle at Kobisi letter, pointing out a genuinely historic divergence in the market.
Oh, the weighting ratio.
Yes. Right now, the ratio of the S&P 500 information technology sector's weight to the overall S&P 500 index has hit a record 0.87.
Wow.
I mean, that ratio has skyrocketed 50% just since the 2022 bear market low, but here is the massive red flag.
Here we go.
While the valuation weight of tech is eating the entire market, the number of employees in the IT sector relative to total non-farm payrolls just dropped to an all-time low of 0.02.
An all-time low.
Yeah. The tech sector has literally lost 342,000 jobs. We're looking at 16 consecutive months of job declines in information tech, all while their stock prices just, go parabolic.
And see, this is exactly what I mean by looking past the consensus. Wall Street is throwing an absolute parade right now for AI-driven productivity, right?
Yeah, because they just see higher margins.
Exactly. They're looking at these massive companies and seeing fewer workers generating higher output, which obviously equals astronomical margins.
Yeah.
But we have to look at the cynical second-order effect here.
Which is what?
Well, is this actually an economic miracle? Or is this just the absolute hollowing out of the tech middle class? You have profits climbing into the stratosphere, but the wages, the actual human capital, the people who thought they were in the safest industry on earth, they're evaporating.
It's just wild to see.
It is. And this isn't like a temporary dip or a seasonal layoff cycle. It's a structural decoupling. Tech valuations no longer require tech workers.
So the natural question is, where is all that valuation money actually going if it's no longer going to be payroll?
Infrastructure. It's going to infrastructure.
Right. And David Sachs, at David Sachs, posted some back-of-the-envelope economics for a single 1 gigawatt AI data center. And, I mean, the numbers are staggering.
They're completely absurd.
Yeah. We are talking $50 billion in capital expenditure just to build one of these facilities. But the enterprise revenue it generates, $25 to $30 billion a year.
Which is just...
That implies a 2-year payback period on a $50 billion investment. Sachs points this out and simply says, the boom is real.
Well, yeah, the boom is real for the people who own the server, sure. But look closely at the other line item in his breakdown.
Power, right?
Exactly. $1 to $2 billion a year just in electricity costs to run a single 1 gigawatt facility. $1 to $2 billion.
That's just to keep the lights on while the server's humming.
Right. And think about what a gigawatt actually means. That is a power consumption of a mid-sized American city sitting in a single warehouse.
It's massive.
So I have a question for you and for the listener, honestly. Who exactly pays to upgrade the electrical grid when these massive data centers max out our national power capacity?
Oh, I see where you're going with this.
Because it is certainly not going to be the tech monopolies footing the bill for thousands of miles of new high-voltage transmission lines. It's going to be the taxpayer. It's going to show up in your monthly utility bill.
Now, hold on. I have to push back a little there. You say the tech companies won't foot the bill, but we are actually seeing Amazon, Microsoft, and Google heavily investing in their own power sources.
You mean the nuclear deals?
Yeah, specifically nuclear energy. I mean, they're signing massive contracts to restart dormant reactors, or they're building small modular reactors specifically so they don't have to rely entirely on the public grid. So, they aren't totally ignoring the infrastructure problem.
Well, okay, they are investing in nuclear for the generation side, yes.
Right.
But the transmission side, the actual physical grid that moves the power from the plant to the data center, that is still a public utility problem.
That's fair.
And when local grids experience unprecedented strain, the municipalities raise rates.
Mm.
So even if Microsoft builds a reactor, the sheer gravitational pull these facilities have on regional resources, it still creates an undeniable public burden.
Yeah, that is a fair point on the local transmission level. And, the race to fill those data centers with hardware is brutal right now, which actually brings us to the chips inside them.
Oh, the AMD news.
Yes. Semi-Analysis, handle at semi-analysis_, posted this fascinating update on the hardware war. We all know NVIDIA has basically held a monopoly on this space, but AMD is pushing incredibly hard.
Very odd.
According to their post, AMD's ROCm software stack just boosted performance for the DeepSeek V4 model by 75 times in just 14 days.
75 times in 2 weeks. That is, it's an absurd velocity of improvement. It changes the calculus of the entire hardware market.
It does, but I have to admit, when I read the technical breakdown of how they did it, my eyes glazed over a bit.
Oh, the math is dense.
Yeah. The post explains it comes from fusing operations, specifically MHC operations, and ROPe Hadamard transformations.
Right. Yeah.
Which drastically reduces CPU overhead. I know you track this stuff closely, so can you translate that? Like, what actually is a ROPe Hadamard transformation?
It sounds like a made-up sci-fi term, I know. But let's use a Blinkist-level analogy here.
Okay, lay it on me.
Imagine a massive, chaotic library. Under the old system, if you wanted to connect two separate complex ideas, the librarian, which is the CPU in this case, had to physically walk down every single aisle, pull the individual books, bring them to the front desk, and compare them.
Which takes forever.
Exactly. That takes an enormous amount of time and creates a massive bottleneck.
Hmm.
What AMD did with this software update is essentially reorganize the library dynamically.
Oh, interesting.
The algorithm perfectly predicts which books need to be compared and mathematically fuses them together before the librarian even has to walk down the aisle. It completely eliminates the traffic jam in the computer's memory.
Oh, wow. So they are effectively writing smarter code to unlock the hardware's actual physical potential?
Yeah, the chips were always powerful. They just figured out how to stop them from waiting in line.
Which narrows that massive gap with NVIDIA.
It is narrowing, yes, but the gap is still very real. AMD still needs about 5 times the gains just to match a single-node NVIDIA B200 chip.
Still, it's wild progress.
It is. But what is truly fascinating here is tracing the origin of this entire $50 billion data center arms race. Like, how did we get here?
We have to look at the text.
Exactly. If we connect this back to the bigger picture, you have to look at a post from tech emails, handle it tech emails. They constantly surface internal tech communications, and they just dropped a text exchange from October 2020 between Sam Altman and Elon Musk.
Yeah, I saw this. This is the exchange where Altman is defending OpenAI's partnership with Microsoft. Right?
That's the one. Musk was publicly dragging OpenAI, calling them hypocritical. Right, basically saying they should change their name since they were no longer open source, but a closed, for-profit entity. So Altman texts him to defend the Microsoft deal, claiming they retain their autonomy. But think about the context of that exact text exchange in late 2020.
It was the turning point.
It was the seed. That tension, that pivot to Microsoft for funding, was driven by one single realization. OpenAI realized that AI was not just a clever algorithm problem. It was a brute force compute problem.
You needed massive money for massive servers.
Exactly. That Microsoft deal is what funded the shift from a scrappy research lab to the behemoths building these $50 billion gigawatt data centers today. That text is literally the origin story of the tech labor divergence we started this show with.
Wow. And, if segment 1 is all about building the massive brain in the data center, segment 2 is about watching that brain actively step into your office and take your job.
Yeah, this is where it gets real.
Let's look at a post from Simon Willison, handle at Simonock. He reported on Shopify's internal AI agent, which they call River.
The public Slack bot.
Yes. Now, River operates exclusively in public Slack channels. You cannot direct message this AI. Shopify forces you to use it in public so that other employees can watch you and learn from what you do with it.
Which is so intentional.
Willison compares it to how Midjourney launched exclusively on Discord, where everyone learned that weird, dark art of image prompting by watching other people succeed and fail in public.
Right, and they frame it as communal learning. That is the corporate PR spin. But if we put our analytical lens back on, there is an incredibly dark side to this forced transparency.
Because it's surveillance.
Exactly. Is this actually about helping human employees learn, or is this just the most efficient surveillance mechanism ever deployed? Think about it. The AI is sitting in those public channels, watching human employees interact, logging every single keystroke.
Learning their specific workflows?
Yes, studying exactly how they solve complex problems. Shopify is basically forcing their current employees to train the very software agent that is going to make them redundant. I mean, it is brilliant from a margin perspective, but it is deeply ruthless.
And think about the psychological toll on the worker. You are sitting at your desk, working alongside a digital coworker that never sleeps, never takes a break, and is actively grading your performance while stealing your workflow.
It changes everything about how you work.
It really does. You start second-guessing every question you ask in Slack because the AI is constantly evaluating your efficiency. It's virtual automation, and the speed of adoption is terrifying. But the physical automation is moving just as quickly.
Oh, the Tesla drive.
Yes. The official Tesla account at Tesla posted today that a car using FSD supervised their full self-driving software just drove from New York City to Los Angeles.
Unbelievable.
That is 2,833 miles. It did it in under 50 hours. And here's the kicker. 0 human interventions.
0.
A consumer vehicle literally navigated the entire country without a human ever touching the steering wheel.
And this right here, this immediately sparks what will undoubtedly be the most important policy debate of the next decade.
The climate agenda versus the labor movement. Yeah, Palmer Luckey, over at Palmer Luckey, weighed in on this achievement. He argued that anyone who truly believes climate change is an existential threat must aggressively support autonomous logistics.
Because of the emissions.
Exactly. He pointed out that the environmental impact of human-driven logistics is catastrophically high. By his rough estimate, autonomous electric robot trucks produce about 1/20th the per-mile carbon emissions of a human-driven diesel equivalent.
Which is a massive reduction.
Right. They don't have to idle at truck stops. They drive at perfectly optimized speeds. They don't brake erratically. He's basically saying if you actually care about the planet, you have to automate the supply chain.
Sure, the climate undeniably wins in that equation. But this raises an incredibly uncomfortable question that nobody wants to answer.
What happens to the humans?
What happens to the human burrito delivery driver? Or the long-haul trucker who supports a family of 4 in Ohio? When push comes to shove in Washington, who gets regulated first? The carbon emitters, or the autonomous robots taking millions of blue-collar jobs?
That is going to be a messy fight.
Very messy. Because right now, the technology is advancing light years faster than our social safety nets can handle the fallout.
Well, and if we're automating the supply chain to save the climate, we are simultaneously automating away the starter jobs that used to build the American middle class.
The middle class is already hurting.
Yeah, and if you look at the demographic data on The Wire today, you can see that the middle class is basically on life support. Now, before we dive into this next segment, a quick note for you, the listener.
Yes, very important.
We are going to pull data from opposite ends of the political spectrum here. We are doing this strictly to analyze cultural data, not to endorse any political viewpoints from the left or the right. We're just trying to convey the ideas contained in the original source material.
Right. We're just looking at the raw math and how it shapes human behavior.
Exactly. So on the economic side, we have a post from Senator Bernie Sanders, handle at Bernie Sanders. He cites data showing that the median age for a first-time homebuyer in the United States is now 40 years old.
40 years old.
I mean, let that sink in. In 1991, it was 28. Young people today are waiting an extra 12 years, more than a full decade, just to scrape together enough capital to buy a starter house.
It's devastating.
He frames this as younger generations staring down a definitively lower standard of living than their parents.
And you have to pair that bleak economic reality with the resulting social reality.
They do. Over on the other side of the political spectrum, the account at NWokeness posted a chart showing what they call the death of marriage. In 1975, 91% of women were married by age 30.
91%.
Yeah. By 2025, that projection has plummeted to 25.6%. And there is a direct inverse correlation charted in the replies. As the marriage rate drops off a cliff, the share of women aged 25 to 34 holding bachelor's degrees climbs from just 13% in 1975 to almost 48% today.
Okay, so if we synthesize this, we have to connect it back to our very first segment today.
Bringing it full circle.
Right, think about the puzzle pieces we have laid out. Tech jobs are vanishing, middle management is being replaced by AI, and blue-collar logistics are being handed over to autonomous trucks.
Right.
Consequently, housing is fundamentally unaffordable until you are pushing 40. Is it any wonder whatsoever that traditional milestones like marriage having children, and home ownership are being drastically delayed or abandoned entirely.
It makes sense on paper.
People want to debate if this is some grand cultural or moral failure, but to me it looks like pure economic mathematical certainty. When the middle class gets hollowed out, the cultural milestones get pushed back. It is just math.
Okay, I hear what you were saying, but I actually have to push back hard on that. Is it really just math, though?
I think it's a huge part of it.
Sure, but you cannot entirely discount the massive cultural shift in how we view independence, careers, and relationships over the last 50 years. The fact that nearly half of women now hold bachelor's degrees means they have financial autonomy that simply didn't exist in 1975.
That's a fair point.
They don't need to marry at 22 for economic survival anymore. Blaming the drop in marriage entirely on housing prices or tech layoffs feels, I don't know, way too neat and deterministic. Human agency has to play a role here.
I will concede that financial autonomy changes the timeline of relationships, absolutely.
Right.
But agency requires resources.
Sure.
You can want to get married and start a family, but if a starter home costs $500,000 at a 7% interest rate, your cultural desires are entirely subordinate to your economic reality. The systemic pressure is what is dictating the timeline.
So how does society deal with that suffocating systemic pressure? We are seeing two very different approaches to applying bandages to this wound.
Oh, the Denmark comparison.
Yeah. On one hand, you have James Tate, handle at JamesTate121, posting a stark comparison showing Denmark's notoriously high tax rates versus their comprehensive public benefits. His argument is that Americans actually pay far more out of pocket when you combine our fractured, privatized bills for healthcare, student loans, childcare, and retirement saving. The Nordic model simply invests in the human infrastructure upfront.
And then there's the American model.
Perfectly encapsulated by a viral video posted by Colin Rugg, handle at Colin Rugg. It shows a commencement speech at North Carolina State University where a wealthy donor named Anil Kochar announces he is paying off the senior year debt for all 200 graduates in the textiles program.
Just writing a check for everyone.
The video shows the students absolutely losing their minds, cheering and crying.
Yeah, and I know that video is supposed to make you smile, but it is incredibly dark.
Why dark?
Because relying on viral, lottery-style philanthropy to fix systemic student debt is a sign of a deeply broken society, not a healthy one. It is a dystopia masquerading as a feel-good story.
That's a grim way to look at it, but I get it.
The fact that 200 kids randomly having their debt cleared makes national viral news. It just highlights how structurally trapped the other tens of millions of students remain.
And because of that deep-seated systemic distrust, because people feel like the traditional paths are just broken, they are looking for exits. They're looking for alternative assets to protect themselves.
Enter crypto and gold.
Exactly. WatcherGuru, at WatcherGuru, posted a historical look at Bitcoin prices on Mother's Day. In 2011, it was $8. On Mother's Day 2026, it hit $81,700.
Insane growth.
And simultaneously, the prediction market, Polymarket, at Polymarket, currently gives 70% odds that Donald Trump's face will appear on a U.S. gold coin by July 4th. This is after he recently reiterated that he wants to personally visit Fort Knox to audit the U.S. gold reserves.
It all connects beautifully. Think about it. When you have an entire generation priced out of housing, terrified of AI agents monitoring their Slack channels and taking their jobs, and relying on viral billionaires to pay off their student loans.
They just stopped trusting the system.
Exactly. They stopped trusting the fiat system. Crypto and gold aren't just investments. They are where you park your money and your hope when you believe the underlying economic machinery of the state is broken. It is a flight from systemic risk.
Well, let's take a breath and step away from the relentless, hyper-optimized machines and systemic pressures for a second.
Good idea.
Because today's Wire also gave us a masterclass in the sheer, unadulterated chaos of human beings. We've talked so much about precision today, but let's look at raw human error.
The Force Elite.
Yes. We have reports from Pirate Nation at Pirate_Nation and Internet80F at Internet80F about a massive, frankly hilarious blunder. The developers at Playground Games accidentally leaked the entirety of the highly anticipated video game Forza Horizon 6 via a Steam update.
The whole game?
The full 155-gigabyte build, completely unencrypted, playable code pushed to SteamDB nearly 10 days before its scheduled launch.
See, this is the perfect wry observation on exactly where we are as a species right now.
How so?
We can build $50 billion 1-gigawatt AI data centers that can do the math to sequence complex proteins.
Yeah.
But a human developer can still just accidentally hit publish and leak a $500 million piece of intellectual property to the entire internet in 1 second.
Just a single click.
You simply cannot engineer away the human fat finger mistake.
It is the ultimate contrast, and we see that extreme contrast in human behavior play out in aviation today as well. We have 2 videos on the wire that show the absolute polar extremes of what people are capable of.
Oh, the laser pointer guy.
Right. First, Breaking 9/11 at Breaking 9/11 posted passenger footage from a Southwest Airlines flight departing Phoenix at night. It is this chaotic, terrifying, shaky video because someone on the ground is actively targeting the cockpit with a green laser pointer against the city lights.
Just pure chaos.
Total reckless malice from a random person on the ground.
A guy with a laser pointer who, by the way, the internet sleuths are already pointing out, is incredibly easy for authorities to track via angle of arrival detection.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he is about to catch an $11,000 fine and federal felony charges for what? A fleeting moment of chaotic, destructive stupidity.
Exactly. And then you contrast that chaotic stupidity with a video posted by Buzz Patterson, handle at Buzz Patterson. It is footage of the Navy Blue Angels in a briefing room doing something called chair flying.
Oh, this is absolutely fascinating to watch.
Right. It is these elite fighter pilots sitting in normal office chairs, perfectly choreographing their entire airshow routine.
It's like a dance.
Yeah. They use exact synchronized verbal commands and these minute hand gestures to mimic the throttle and stick. It is literally like they are compiling the code of a flight routine directly into human muscle memory so it runs without latency.
Because there's zero room for error.
Exactly. They are programming themselves because there is zero wiggle room.
Yeah.
When they're in the air, they are flying 18 inches apart at hundreds of miles an hour.
That is the dichotomy of humanity right there, perfectly distilled in 2 posts.
Huh.
On one hand, you have the absolute extreme discipline of military aviators who train their physical minds to act with the precision of a machine.
Yeah.
On the other hand, you have the chaotic malice of a guy trying to blind a commercial jet with a laser pointer for a laugh. The machines we talked about in segment 1, they are perfectly consistent. Humans are a wild spectrum ranging from absolute brilliance to absolute chaos.
Which is exactly why we need to take us all home with a perspective shift to sign off for the day. Outside of the data centers, the leaked video games, the economic anxiety, and the shifting cultural milestones, the physical world just keeps spinning quietly on its axis.
A good reminder.
The astronomy account at For All Curious posted a beautiful time-lapse from Utqiagvik, Alaska. Today, May 11th, the sun rose at 2:57 a.m. after 65 long days of darkness.
Wow.
And because of the Earth's tilt at that latitude, the sun will not set again for 84 straight days.
An 84-day sunrise.
Yeah.
That is a deeply humbling reminder that nature operates on a scale that just does not care about our S&P 500 weightings, our AI benchmarks, or our political divides.
Not even a little bit.
But, to bring us back to the reality of the market we do live in, here's my prediction for tomorrow, based on everything we have synthesized today.
Let's hear it.
Given that historic tech labor decoupling we saw from the Kubisi letter, and given that companies like Shopify are already confidently running AI agents in public Slack channels, I predict that within the next 24 hours, we will see a major legacy Fortune 500 company formally announce an AI restructuring.
Oof.
And let's be explicitly clear about what that corporate code actually means. It means replacing thousands of middle managers with autonomous software agents. The great decoupling is not slowing down. It is going to accelerate.
The gears of the machine are definitely turning faster every day, which leaves you, the listener, with one final provocative question to chew on as you go about your day.
The big question.
If an AI agent can sit silently in a Slack channel, watch you work, and perfectly learn how to do your job, and if a car can navigate from New York to Los Angeles in 50 hours without a human ever touching the steering wheel, what is the one uniquely human skill you possess today that cannot be open-sourced, replicated, or fully automated by this time next year?
It might be the only question that actually matters right now.
We will leave you to think on that. Thank you for joining us on today's Deep Dive. We will be back tomorrow to cast the vibes and connect the dots all over again. Goodbye.